Hey, good morning everybody. Welcome to another in the Avid series of Venue Live Sound webinars. Can everybody hear me okay? We always start right there. Let's make sure everybody can hear us all right. If you can, please find the chat window and type in a yes response or something like that to let us know that you're there. And we'll carry on here. Kind of an exciting day for us here at Avid because this morning I'm going to introduce you to a new product that we're releasing called SC48 Remote. So you'll actually get a chance to help us celebrate all the hard work that's been done over the past few months and everything that went into that project. We're looking forward to it. In addition, I'm going to run you through some enhancements to the Venue software, some of which are a direct result of the SC48 Remote, but others will impact the entire Venue line, and that's always exciting as well. Everybody kind of gets some goodness from a new product that comes out. So with that in mind, let's kind of get going. We'll get right into it. We got a lot to cover today, so let's jump right ahead here. All right, so here's what you see here is the Venue SC48 Remote package. It comprises of two parts and pieces now. As you can see, we have the control surface, as you can see in the foreground, but also a remote I/O box called Stage 48. So you can see that there. So your SC48 system is going to comprise of at least two pieces there if you're in the SC48 Remote model. Okay? So let's take a look at maybe the basic configuration. If we kind of scoot around behind the console, what you see on the screen is really the basic configuration of SC48 Remote. And note that we've actually got 32 remote inputs now. The remote stage box is going to carry 32 of those inputs. And we also have 16 outputs located in the Stage 48. As well, we have left 16 inputs located locally in the SC48 control surface. But you know, kind of as you can probably already start to imagine, there's really a number of different configurations that are going to be possible with this system. So I'm going to run you through as many of those today as I can get you through, as much as time allows, that's for sure. So let's carry on. You know, let's just say that we wanted to lay out our system a little differently than the basic configuration. Certainly one of those possibilities is going to be to locate all 48 mic line inputs remotely into the stage rack. And as you can see there, we only have enough slots in the stage rack for 3 cards to go in there. So if we fill it up with inputs, you might be asking, well, what do we do with our output card? Well, we could certainly continue to use the output card locally. You see the 16 analog I/O up in the top there at the console. But we could also add a second stage rack if we wanted to do that and take those outputs and move those down to the stage as well. So now we have an entirely remote architecture here. We have the SC48 local to our mixing position, but we have the other devices down at the stage level or the remote level. Maybe they're in a machine room, wherever you want them to be. And we have the full complement of 32 or 48 by 16 located remotely. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't have outputs local to the console as well. You could certainly add a second output card to that local area and have outputs locally there. So here you would have obviously 48 mic line inputs remotely located, 16 analog outputs remotely located, and 16 local to the console. But if you're using ANET, et cetera, you know, you might want to actually put your ANET card down at the stage level or the remote location as well. This probably makes the most sense in most applications where you're using Aviom, just simply because it puts it closer to the set of mixers that are on stage. So, you know, this gives you the ability to get all of your I/O out to the remote location, closer to its sources, et cetera. You're going to suffer all the benefits of that remotely located preamps, et cetera. You get all the benefits of that digital snake, where we get microphone sources much closer to the preamp, and we all know there's some audio goodness that comes from that. But you know, if you look at you know, the traditional SC48, sometime back we released another I/O card for it that actually is going to play a key role in SC48 remote concept here. So Let's take a look at what that means to us as well. If we were to add an I/O16 to this package now, that also gives us the ability to have some local I/O at the console, as well as having 48 mic line inputs remotely located and our 32 outputs remotely located. All right, so it's going to give us a lot of flexibility, and we're going to cover some of those concepts here coming up. So let's take a look at a few of those and maybe talk about how we might want to integrate the SC48 remote with some third-party devices to help us out a little bit. So as you can see here, we've kind of gone back to our basic package. We've got 32 inputs located remotely, 16 outputs located remotely, 16 mic line inputs located at the console, and we have the IOX card installed. So with that, you know, probably the workflow that I've seen that would require something like this the most would be in churches or in TV production sometimes. A lot of places where you might be mixing front of house and monitors from the same location. So, you know, it's pretty advantageous at times to have all your RF sitting right next to you. You might want that at the console area. So this gives you the option to have those mic line inputs local to the console, plug in your RF mics out there into the mic pre's, and still have 32 inputs of it on stage. You know, in addition to that, you know, another place that we might see this kind of setup sometimes is in corporate or, you know, places where in churches where we might have drama, et cetera, and you know, a very popular device to use in that setting is a Dugan auto mixer. Well, with that I/O16 installed in the console, we can easily integrate an 8-channel Dugan E1 into that area and be able to do the auto mixing right there and still have all of our RF mics locally, et cetera. So you can see just in terms of workflow and logistics, especially for that guy that's mixing front of house and monitors or doing corporate work, you know, you can keep everything located yet still have the remote I/O to take advantage of all the goodness that comes with that, both logistically and in terms of sound quality. All right, let's carry on here. If you're looking in this situation to keep all of the mic inputs located remotely down at the stage level, as well as have your outputs back there, you know, maybe in a 2-stage rack situation like you see here on screen, but you still are going to be in a situation where you might want inputs local, mic inputs local to the console, you can always revert to using an external pre. If we were just to use something like an Avid pre and then bring that right into the insert return points on the I/O16, now we've got another 8 channels of mic line level available to us at the console. Now obviously the preamp level control happens at the device. It does not happen on the console, but still the goal is achieved there of having it locally accessible and being able to incorporate more mic pre's into the console. Now, you know, I will state this is probably the right time to say it. You know, remember, you know, our architecture is 48 by 32, but the I/O16 is above and beyond that count. So this is actually a way of getting your mic pre count above 48 up to 56. You can do that very easily here. As a matter of fact, this is exactly what I do on my shows. I always have a pre available to patch into those insert points. This, you know, this I/O card. There's similar ones in mix rack and in the FOH and stage rack system, so you could do this same approach no matter what menu system you're on. And it gives you the ability to obviously put in things like audience mics and measurement mics. All of that stuff can be handled locally to the console without disrupting your 48 by 32 or 48 by 16, in this case, count down at the stage. So, you know, it just becomes very, very simple to do. It's very clean in terms of its technical interface as well. For the Avid Pre, there's a D sub that you could buy out to 1/4 inch, and it plugs right in, and very nice and neat, nice and tidy. All right, let's take a look at another one here where, let's say you know, you had that remote package again where all of your mic line inputs are remote to the stage, your outputs are local to the stage. And you kind of knew from the, you know, the dictation of the situation that you're in, whatever show that it's called, you know, that you're on, you're kind of thinking, okay, well, I'm still going to need my insert points. I can't really give up those insert points, you know, to more pre's out there. How can I manage that situation? Well, you could look into a third-party device like a Millennium Media preamp, which also has a converter package built into it. They offer that as an option where you're not only preamping, but now you're converting to digital in the same device, and bring that in the AES inputs on the back of the console. That way you could still plug in your wireless there if you needed to do it, or whatever. Maybe it's, again, maybe it's going to be audience mics or measurement mics, etc. That could all happen here and still leave those insert points available for whatever you wanted to use them for. I'm just showing the Dugan here, but if you had other insert gear that you wanted to consume those insert points with, you could certainly do that there. So you can see you get a really, that IO16 card is a really key piece of this, and it actually gives you a tremendous amount of power and flexibility right at the console, in addition to the whole SC48 remote concept. Okay? All right. So let's just kind of review here in terms of kind of the highlights of the SC48 remote and the Stage 48. As I mentioned earlier, the system remains at 48 inputs and 32 outputs. Even though you have more slots available than that in a 2-stage rack system, you cannot increase the input count, the mic input count above 48, other than through the IOX card, as I mentioned earlier. Same thing with outputs. It tops out at 32 outputs. All right. 2-stage racks can be used, as we mentioned. And as you saw in the previous diagrams, the IO16 can be used to increase both analog and digital IO counts. Just some basic specs on the hardware of it. The rack itself is a 5U piece. Empty is about 30 pounds, full 42.5, 42.5 pounds, so not terribly heavy. As far as the snake specifications, we haven't really talked much about the snake to this point, but it is a completely redundant snake protocol where we have a primary snake and a backup snake that is being incorporated using 2 shielded Cat5e cables. The cables has to be rated at 350 megahertz or better, and really it needs to have the Neutrik Ethercon connector as well to fit the full spec. So you really want to take care here and make sure you're getting snake and Ethernet cable that fits the Avid spec. It is what we qualify it at and do all of our testing at, so that's what you're going to want to have in your system for sure. The maximum snake length at those specifications is 328 feet or 100 meters. All right, so that'll work in most live sound applications, that is for certain. And no small consequence here, or no small thing to mention here, Stage 48 is Avid's first AVB capable device. If any of you have been following the ideas of network, etc., then you probably know that AVB has been coming for some time. You know, I'm going to run you through just some little high-level concepts of it to kind of introduce you to it. I encourage you to get on the web and do some research on it and find out what it's all about. To me, it's a very, very exciting thing that's coming. I think it's going to be the answer to a lot of our networking woes in audio specifically. So let's take a look at what AVB means and how it might fit into our world in venue. So what is Ethernet AVB? Well, it is a true standard for real-time media devices. The idea is that it would replace a host of audio and video cables with one connectivity solution. And the idea here is that it becomes very affordable, and the goal of it really is to create a standard that will be able to be used by any number of manufacturers in their products. Primarily the goal there to be able to keep the cost down. One of the challenges we have with current networking is that really to some degree they're all creating little islands. It's not near as ubiquitous as we want it to be. Where it doesn't really matter where we're plugging in that cable. It can know what's going on and be able to transport audio, and in the case of AVB, video as around to all of these different locations that we designate. The power of AVB will be that it will also exist in the consumer market, it may exist in the automotive market, etc. So that will keep the cost down. It will also ensure that it's around for a long, long time. And to me, the most promising aspect of it is that an organization like IEEE is the one actually setting the standard. These are the same folks that did the standards for FireWire and USB, et cetera. So, once they set that standard, hopefully it will be more ubiquitous to our industry. And to kind of help that along, there's this alliance that has been created called the AVNU Alliance. And, we're pretty excited to be a part of that. Obviously, the alliance is comprised and growing daily of many, many different types of audio, video, IT, consumer electronics, automotive manufacturers, et cetera. Basically, these are all the folks that have a stake in the outcome of the standard and hence are going to contribute significantly to the development of the standard and try to ensure that it works as seamlessly as possible, manufacturer to manufacturer. The names that you see up on screen here are kind of a pittance of everybody that is involved in this. There's a ton of people involved in it. Like I said, it kind of seems to grow daily. And I encourage you to try to check into this a little bit and see what you think of what's going on. As a matter of fact, I'll make a shameless plug for it here. I believe at NAB, there's going to be a big AVNU Alliance demonstration where we're going to have some interconnected manufacturers and begin to show and explore some of the possibilities of transporting signals around and possibly some control, et cetera. So I encourage you to look up AVNU Alliance and look for AVB presentations at NAB. So let's take a look at, kind of get a glimpse of what AVB connectivity might mean and consider this configuration for SC48 remote. In this diagram here, you can kind of see that we've incorporated a LabX Ethernet switch called Titanium 411. If you notice on the previous slide, LabX was one of the promotional partners for the AVNU Alliance, and they've developed a device that is AVB compatible or AVB capable. And the 411 will essentially take an Ethernet connection from the console and convert it to fiber. And then through the same device, we're able to return it back to its Ethernet connection for connection to the stage 48. So, obviously in this situation, this would allow you to increase your snake length from literally hundreds of feet to, thousands of feet down fiber. So that's incorporating a third-party device that fits into that AVB protocol and allows us to do that very easily. This LabX device is an interesting device. I encourage you again to look it up on the internet, et cetera. It's one that's been really ruggedized, kind of with touring in mind, with the rigors of touring in mind. It offers Ethercon connectors for the Cat5 connection and even Speakon style connection for the power, as opposed to a wall wart or anything like that. It's very robust. It's set up for truly professional, rugged applications. So have a look at it. And, like I said, this is just one example of third-party integration of AVB products and how they can help and complement each other. Okay? All right. Well, for all of you SC48 owners, your current SC48 owners, there is good news for you. We will be offering a conversion kit that will allow you to convert your existing SC48 to SC48 remote. And I'm going to kind of go over the parameters of that and how you get it done, et cetera. So let's take a look at what that's all about. So here you kind of see the components of the remote conversion kit. Certainly you would see an Ethernet snake card. You see an empty rack there, essentially just 3 blank panels and the stage 48 snake card. You'll still need a Cat5e redundant snake, have 2 snakes for it. Those are not included in the package, by the way. I want to make that clear. You'll have to go out and purchase those separately. And then there will also be some additional internal hardware that comes with this kit as well, so that you can convert your existing SC48. So if we take a look at, back to again to a basic SC48, which is 48 mic line inputs and 16 analog outputs, if we were to convert that to SC48 remote, it essentially would go like this. We would basically take 32 inputs out of the SC48, put them in the stage rack. We could take the outputs with it if we wanted to. You remember we talked about this kind of in the early slides about all the different configurations that are possible. All of those configurations will be possible on your existing SC48 as well once you do the conversion. So if you want to just revert back to those earlier slides, all of those possibilities will be available for you as well. So let's take a look at let's just kind of review what you customers that are SC48 owners are going to need to do to get this conversion to happen. Here are the three components that I mentioned earlier. If we're converting an SC48, the I/O is moved around. Obviously, you can replace it in the different pieces and parts of the kit. There are some internal brackets, as I mentioned earlier, that handle some of the cable management within the console itself, etc. But these are really the important pieces of this notification to you. It does require an Avid authorized repair center or reseller distributor that offers tech service. Okay, you're going to have to use somebody technically proficient to make the initial changeover to SC48 remote. And the other important piece of the puzzle here is that the labor cost for that conversion is not included in the conversion bundle purchase price. Okay, so be aware you're going to have to buy the conversion kit, and you'll have to buy your snakes, and you'll have to pay for labor to get it changed over. So I promise you it's probably worth every penny. You're going to want to do it. Everyone that we've talked to that's got SC48s about this and has been very, very excited about this changeover and are doing it at the drop of a hat. So we're all very excited about it on our end. All right, let's jump into some of the enhancements in the Venue 3.0 software. As you all know, one of the big benefits in the Venue line is that we operate on one application for the entire line. So what that allows us to do, obviously, is if we have enhancements, as in the case of SC48 remote here, where we've had to do things in the software to facilitate the hardware, there are also other advantages that can come with that. There are other software upgrades that can come with that, and they can enhance the entire user experience in the entire line of products. So we'll go through these kind of one by one. There's a handful of them. Some of them are simple. Some of them are really, really exciting, and you know the people that I've shown them to so far are just thrilled with some of these that are going to happen. In addition, you know the ones for SC48 remote apply for all the SC48s, so you're going to see the power of SC48 increase pretty substantially here. So take a look at what we got here. So let's start for SC48. We're going to move up the amount of processing channels to 64 channels. You know, it was previously 48 processing channels. This is going to give you the ability to, you know, return things like Pro Tools returns or external mic preamps like we talked about earlier on the input faders, as opposed to being restricted to the effects returns if you needed to be above that 48 mic pre count. So let's take a look at the GUI here, and I'll show you the drop down for what it looks like. Here we see the drop down on a SC48. If I drop it down, you'll notice that now you have 64 processing channels available to you now. Okay? All right, great. So the next piece of it is that we're going to increase the aux bus count to 24 auxes, and we're going to use the same model that we use in the other consoles, meaning Profile and D-Show and Mix Rack, all of the other surfaces that we use, which is the Vari-Groups model. We're going to take the subgroups and make them now aux masters and use the same model we did previously. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the GUI. All right, so here you see an overhead version or overhead shot of the console, and I'll show you how this is going to operate on SC48. As you can see here, we have auxiliaries 1 through 8 selected, and you can see that in purple in the software. If we select 9 through 16, we see that selected in the software. And if we go back to the 1 through 8 button, it now takes us to the variable groups as well. Oops, one more time, there we go. So a double press of that. We see the flashing indicator here in the auxiliary selection indicating that we're in vari group. We also have a flashing light here, no different than we do on the other consoles, which indicates that we're in vari group mode as well. Okay? So again, it's 1 through 8, 9 through 16, 17 through 24. Okay? All right, let's carry on. We're also going to increase the amount of plug-in slots that are available to SC48. It was previously 20. We're essentially just going to double it to 40. What we've found through SC48's time out into the world a little bit is that guys are not necessarily running out of DSP processing, which was kind of our concern when we released it with 20 slots. We wanted to make sure we weren't setting folks up for trouble in terms of running out of DSP. But with all of the manufacturers out there that are releasing multi-shell, et cetera, they're very DSP efficient. So we regularly see users that have SC48 fully loaded with plug-in processing and could actually have room for more. So we've increased it to 20 slots. Let's take a look at the GUI. All right, so here you see the plug-in window, and you'll notice even though I'm on an SC48, I can scroll down now, and we have a full 4x10 system here, 10 slots, 4 racks wide for 40 spaces. Okay? All right, let's head back to the PowerPoint. For MixRack, this is another one of those advantages that comes now with the new software. For Venue 3.0, we're actually going to up its processing count to 80 channels. It was previously at 64, but we're going to move it up to 80 channels to give guys more capability to use those input faders for things other than mic pre's. Okay? All right, let's get on down to some of the benefits that are going to come in Venue 3.0 to all of the consoles. This affects the entire line once they move up to 3.0. First one that we'll talk about here is really a very significant one, and we've been kind of waiting and working on this one for quite a while. But with the latest release of Pro Tools 10, we can now support 32 tracks of FireWire with the console. So there's some particular ways to do it. I want to alert you ahead of time. The drivers did not necessarily come with the Pro Tools 10 software. You have to do an upgrade of firmware to the FWX card in your console, and that firmware upgrade does not happen with the Venue 3.0 upgrade. So even though you've upgraded to 3.0, if your firmware is still at 1.0 for the FWX card, you'll need to upgrade that as well. So let's take a look at how that happens. Let's go back to PowerPoint, Gabe, and I'll show them this. So the way this has to happen is the drivers actually have to exist on your connected computer. This can either be a Mac or a laptop or a PC laptop or tower, but you're going to connect that computer to the SC48 via FireWire, and then you're going to initiate this firmware upgrade from the computer itself. These drivers are readily available on the web. We can pull up a link for you. I believe we'll be able to pull up the link for you to get you to them. At any rate, they're going to be part of the 3.0 upgrade package and will come with the software. All right, but you do need to run this in order to see the 32 tracks and make them available. Let's go back to the GUI real quick, and I'll show you what it kind of looks like there. If we go to the patch bay and we look at Pro Tools now, you'll notice that the FWX here in Pro Tools now is 32 channels wide. We can actually bring in inputs or outputs in 32 channel mode. If we go to the devices page and we right click on the FireWire area, we'll be able to see the firmware version here. So if you can notice, this firmware version is 2.5, which is what it needs to be able to be to be able to support 32 tracks of recording. If you were still at 1.0 here, what you would see in the patch bay is only 16 channels. The 17 through 32 would be grayed out until that firmware upgrade happens. So just be aware that even though you upgrade your software to 3.0, there is an additional firmware upgrade that has to take place for you to experience the 32 tracks, okay? All right, let's carry on to our next one, next little bullet here. Whoops, sorry. Another one that is kind of neat to go through is auxiliary names now appear in the inputs display. So previously, these aux names did not appear, or they only appeared on the console, and you know, it was kind of, I don't want to say counterintuitive, but it was just a little hard to follow and make the connection between the GUI and the console. So we've cleaned this up. We had a lot of requests to do this. So take a look at what we got here now. If you notice in the aux from the GUI here, if you can see it here, the names of the actual auxiliary are listed at this point of the console. Now, previously what we displayed there was level, and if you have your mouse over the encoder here, it will show you the level that that encoder is sitting. And as you turn it, you will see level. But as you let off of it or move your cursor away from it, it's going to display the name that you've typed into the actual aux, okay? So there, it'll add one level of connection between what you see on the screen and what you see on the console. I think this is really going to help some guys out. So a lot of excitement about that one. All right. Our next one is that we've now integrated the high-pass filter to an EQ copy and paste and the presets. Now, this is kind of one that's happened as a result of, you know, really kind of being in the digital world. You know, when we're in analog, more often than not, the high-pass filter is a function of the preamp design, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way in digital. And we were finding users, when they were copying and pasting EQ, were actually expecting the high-pass filter to go along with it. So we've now changed that, the way the console works in that regard, where now high-pass filter actually moves along with an EQ copy and paste. So if you want to see it, we'll come back to the GUI now, and I'll just do one for you. All right, so here we see a hi-hat EQ, a little bit of mid-range taken out of it, but a fairly significant high pass on it. I'm just going to take that EQ and copy it, and I'm going to paste it down into another channel. And notice that the high-pass filter and the EQ goes with it now into this new channel. So we've just taken the EQ from the hi-hat and moved it down into another channel. So the important piece of the message there is really that the high-pass filter now goes along with an EQ copy and paste. Okay? All right, let's move on. Here's a nice one here. I really love this one, and honestly don't know how I got along without it. And that is the double click of an input select will take you directly to the inputs page for that input. So let's go to the overhead in the GUI. Yeah, I got it there, Gabe. Thank you. Normally, if we were on, let's say we were on the plugins page and we were selecting inputs, you know, just single selects, we would have to go single select and then go to the inputs page in order to make that happen. Whereas now, if we're in any other page, it doesn't really matter where we are, and we double press the select, it takes us immediately to that channel on the inputs page. So we can be anywhere and navigate directly back to a selected channel on the inputs page. Once I got used to operating it like this, I was just like, wow, how did I ever have this without this? It's so much faster now, and way less arm and hand movement operating the console. So that's a pretty cool one. All right, let's go to our next bullet. This is another one that I've demonstrated for a lot of users around the world, and they get really excited by this one for some reason. But you know, it is a pretty cool one, and it is logical, and we finally have it now on the console, and it revolves around how to clear a multi-selection. Previously in the past, if you wanted to multi-select, let's say we multi-select a bank of inputs, either by mouse or whatever. Maybe we do it individually. We could hold down multi-select and select multiple channels. Didn't matter how you do it. If you wanted to deselect that multi-selection, it required the selection of an input outside of the selection to clear it. Now, this was all fine and good unless you had everything selected. Let's say you selected all inputs. Well, now I've got all inputs selected. How would I deselect? Well, the only way to do it was to hold down multi-select, deselect one channel, and then reselect it to clear it. So as you can see, it got very messy and very convoluted. It was hard to do under pressure, etc. But we've made that very, very simple now. So if you selected a number of channels, the way you clear it now is just simply by repressing the multi-select button, and that clears it, regardless of how many channels are selected. So here we have all inputs selected, and I'm just going to clear it by pressing the multi-select button. So just a little housekeeping there, one that we want to definitely try to make it easier and requiring less thought for you to actually operate the console. Let's go to our next bullet. Here's another exciting one. This user button, for you guys that are familiar with the console, has existed for a long time on the console. And we've been reserving it for some neat functionality coming up in future revisions, which we have not done yet. But there's been so much demand by the user base to be able to use that user button for tap tempo, as well as other things. And we thought, well, let's open up the events list to that user button so that you can do some programming on it. So let's go back to the GUI. We'll take a look at just building an event using the user button. So I've already got it built in here, but I'll show you how it works. For you guys that are familiar with building events, you'll understand really how easy this is to do. I've just created a new event called Tap Tempo, and obviously the action will be Tap Tempo. But what we're going to use to initiate the action is the user button, and it just simply shows up in the drop-down menu now for the events right here. So now you would just select the user switch, and you'll be able to do tap tempos for your plugins that are set up to receive tap tempo. So I'm going to tap one out here. You'll see the tempo appear here. You'll see the tempo change here on the device as well. All right. So we're just using that on the user button, and really the kind of the gold that comes from that, especially on SC48 and Profile, where we have dual-purpose mute groups and function switches, are that I don't have to lose sight of my mute switches now to do tap tempo. Previously, we would have to switch over to function, do the tap, etc., to get the time, and then maybe switch back to mute groups. And it could end up being a lot of moves that you're going to do over and over throughout the night. Whereas here now you can kind of leave it on mute groups, assign that button down to the user, and do all your taps right here. So very handy, and it cleans up the workflow a lot. All right, let's go to our next bullet. All right, now we're going to do probably one of our more exciting ones. And again, this one comes high on the demand list from the user base in regard to just how we actually manage processing channel placements on the console. So let's go explore that on the GUI and the console overhead shot here. So you can see in this situation, I've got a number of channels. Let me take you to the patch bay here, then I'll be able to explain it a little better. This is from a show file where we're actually mixing front of house and monitors on the same console. And as you can kind of see here, we've taken some channels, some strategic channels, and we've created duplicates of it. For instance, we've created a duplicate of the kick output or kick outside mic, the snare top, the hi-hat, the overheads. If we go down, there's others as well. We've created a duplicate of the guitar, of the bass, etc. And those inputs would be used strictly for monitors, while the source inputs would be used strictly for front of house. That way we have discrete inputs for front of house and monitor mixing. Now the challenge with doing it as it's laid out right here, as we go back to the input side, is that we've got monitor channels interleaved all throughout our front of house channels. So in terms of workflow, this would be a difficult thing to do. It would be very easy to get mixed up, etc., where in fact what we want to create is a front of house console, and then maybe on another layer have our monitor console built. So we want to be able to get to those two things quickly and know which world we're in at any given time. So let's use the drag and drop feature now to relocate those channels and get them in a more kind of secure and easier to use position, okay? All All right, so we're going to go back here now, and as you notice, I'll point them out here kind of on camera as well. Here's all of the M channels that we would have, all those monitor channels that we would have. If we went down to the second bank, they're kind of all over the place, and we want to collate those down into an area of their own on the console. So I'm going to use multi-select, and I'm going to select all of these quote-unquote M or monitor channels. Okay, that looks like them. And previously, we would have to go down and right-click on this area that we want to move it to and tell it to move all of that down here. Now we don't have to do that with drag and drop. We can just take the selected channels and drag them down to the location that we want them and drop them in. And now all of those monitor channels are collated to here. You notice that it instantly cleaned up our front of house area here, where we have all front of house channels here. And we have our monitor channels sitting on this third layer. Whoops. Sitting on this third layer. So now here's all of our monitor levels. So now we have the A and B layer for FOH and the C layer for monitors. If we wanted to push those even down farther, if we wanted to put them in the D layer, if we wanted to move those on down, then we would multi-select however many channels we want to move it down. So in this situation, I want to move it 16 locations. So I'm going to multi-select our monitor channels. Whoops, get my hands on the right button there. And I'm going to right-click and say Insert Blank Strips. And notice it's inserted 8 blanks there. I'm going to insert another set of blank strips. And now notice that my monitors are on the D layer. I have A and B for FOH, C is blank, and D is my monitor layer. So just that quick, we've kind of moved the entire architecture of the console around and been able to really clean things up very, very simply. Okay? All right, so that kind of covers all the software grades, or upgrades. It covers all of the SC48 remote, all of your upgrade options for standard SC48s in terms of conversion. Hopefully we gave you all the info you would ever need there for doing those things, and able to give you some better tools to mix in venue land there. So we're going to move on to the Q&A portion of the presentation. Both Sheldon and I will be here to take your questions. We've been compiling them offline while the webinar has been going on here, so we've been grabbing your questions. Some of them we've just been answering in the background, obviously, but there are some key questions that we think might benefit all the users. We'll pull those up and answer them. If you want, keep on submitting the questions. We'll answer as many of them as time allows, okay? So with that, let's move on to the Q&A portion. Thanks for attending. Thanks. Bye-bye.